Dan Bailey, 207 North Street, yep, Housatonic. Okay, first question. Kate, can I get that slide back up there, like your first or second slide, please?
Which slide?
First or second slide.
First of all, the questions I'll go
I'm
first.
sorry. Mr. Chairman, can I have the presenter?
You only have 3 minutes. Do you want to give all your
so
questions?
you're taking my
first?
time, so can we get those slides up there, please?
Go ahead.
Are you looking for the site side?
Yep, those two aerial views.
Okay.
What is to the left-hand side of those?
The pointer, I just want to make sure we're talking about the same thing.
Across from the solar panels.
Yep,
Where?
right across from, to
Here?
the west, yep. What is all that?
That's Formel and,
And what is just to the north of that?
To the north.
Further up the page?
okay, yeah, I'll go. There's a home that's in
That's my house,
industrial
okay.
zone.
Okay, there will be no outburst from the audience.
And further up? Keep going along that line, I'm getting to a point
Okay,
here.
well, I mean,
And I only got 3 minutes.
All right.
You got 2 now.
I have no problem saying that there's houses here. We've identified.
Thank you,
there's houses
okay.
here.
There's houses there, thank you.
Saying that you never did it.
Okay,
Okay, let's get this clear. Dan, I'm stopping for a second.
okay,
If there's going to be outbursts in the audience, I'll ask the person to be removed.
Okay.
Because we're going to keep this orderly. Okay, let's go.
Second question. Mr. Chairman, can you ask the expert who was talking about the volatile gases earlier, where they will be exhausted to?
Okay, you want-
So you want to come, maybe if you guys all come over here, it might keep this going a little quicker.
I think what we're going to end up doing, I'll let Dan do this, but I think we'll end up saving questions and pooling them.
So do you want, you
Let's
just
let
want to?
Dan go through this.
Okay. So,
Okay, I will start to have people removed because we're not going to do this. Okay, thank you.
So I'm gonna turn it back over to David, who presented on the slide, but I do want to say that all of the C1D1 lab and all of the materials that are being stored, the quantity and how they're stored have been sent to the fire chief, and the fire chief has signed off that they're being stored correctly, and the quantities are safe to have on the area. But I will let, if the question is about chemicals, I'll let Dave answer that.
Yeah. So gases are not removed. It's just in the event that there is a breach from the equipment that is certified with engineers, all standards, if there's a problem, then the exhaust fans will turn on to evacuate the gas out of the building. But the systems that we're using are closed loop systems, and they recycle the gases that manufacture the biomass. There's never a point in time where they're supposed to off gas through the building and go flying out the exhaust fans. So that's
Okay.
it.
When you're in that booth, it's my understanding that you guys are wearing respirators and things like that? Is that correct?
Yeah, for safety precautions.
Right. So in a case of an accident, it's fair to say that that noxious gas will be expelled towards residents.
In a very unlikely event, it will go.
But it could happen. Thank you. That's good, thank you.
Well, yeah.
No, it could happen. I got 3 minutes, so thank you. Next question. During a drought, will there be a reduced water restriction? It's a private water company. I have that water. You guys are pumping 2 million gallons in there. During a drought, will you guys be reducing your water usage?
That question's for Housatonic Water Company.
So we'll put that on the list
Okay.
to ask who to
Okay. This isn't going well. Great. Okay, to the board. Are any of you experts on marijuana cultivation, marijuana noise associated with marijuana cultivation or manufacturing, or odors associated with it? Are any of you experts?
We're not answering questions, Dan, so you know that.
Okay. So,
You have
I could get up
you
here
have
and tell
about
you
30
that I'm an
seconds.
expert about something, correct? And being that I'm an expert on odor control, because I can smell bullshit from a mile away. I've smelt it in this room all night.
Dan, do you want to just wrap up, please?
Yeah. So, anyway, you guys have a duty to find out the information. They can tell you what they want, because they are hired to do so. It is your obligation to make sure what they're telling you is true, and it will not impact all these people in this room.
Okay, next.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Konashumsky, 5 Deer Trail Road. As I was preparing for tonight's meeting, I started thinking about some things. I did research on the Fulcrum project, and I talked to many, many people in the community. And I timed this so it's 3 minutes. I also attended Thursday night's board meeting. For the first time in 30 years, I got up and stood up and talked at a meeting in town where I've lived for 30 years. While I was preparing, I thought to myself, who am I? I had a conversation with my son, who's here with me, about how I could make an impact in my 3 minutes in town. I'm not an odor expert. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a lawyer. I'm going to speak from the heart. As many of you know me, I've spent 30 years in this community working for a nonprofit. And my goal always has been to help all the families thrive in this community. You know me through youth sports. You know me from running the booster clubs up to the high school. You know me through the chamber. You know me through my volunteer work. We all have connections in this community. I'm an ordinary citizen in Great Barrington who cares deeply about people. I'm here to speak for the families who are really uncomfortable to get up, and I've heard a lot of it the last 3 weeks. I want to be their voice. I've lived in Great Barrington, and I remember when the town leaders of this community in May 2017 signed the trust policy. And I will quote, what was the trust policy? To provide trust, safety, and inclusion for all members of our community. Are we concerned about what's going to happen where the residential, these families live near there? Yes, we're concerned. Are we worried about the odor, the mold spores, and the chemicals that are going to be used and pumped into the neighborhoods? Are we going to have to keep our windows closed as the smell and the exhaust of chemicals like the SL4000 misted out and permeates in the neighborhoods as the wind blows? Nobody controls the wind. I'm worried about air quality, groundwater, and soil. How are the property values going to look in the future? Have I worked for years paying for my house so it's going to decrease in value? I'm worried about all the other things. Have we not learned from the mess from our neighbors in the north with the PCB? What's going to happen years down the road? Have you looked at the studies? We're at a pivotal junction right now, Great Barrington. Your decision has long-term effects on our community that's going to ripple out. I've personally watched family after family leave our town. Is this going to be a place where people want to raise children and to expose them to the odor and the health risks? We all know the school enrollment's going down. It's going to continue to slide because more and more families are going to choose not to place their families at risk. And they're going to move away, and they're not going to be replaced with families. I implore you, the selectmen, to ask the questions, get the unanswered questions answered, and I'll tell you, our children, asthmatics, elders, and families are counting you as the leaders to safeguard our health and our community. Thank you.
Applause is fine, but it's just taking up time. So please, no applause. Let's just keep going with this.
Carol McGlinchey, 10 Beacon Hill,
Little
Housatonic.
louder. We didn't hear you.
Can you repeat your name?
Carol McGlinchey, 10 Beacon Hill, Housatonic, speaking in opposition. The legal growing and manufacturing of marijuana products is in its infancy. Experts quoted in marijuana trade journals acknowledge that odor mitigation is a major and as yet unsolved problem where the facilities are currently operating. School children report experiencing headaches and nausea in schools from the odor of nearby marijuana grow facilities. The long-term health effects of the odor of chronic noise, airborne pollutants, and runoff from a large-scale growing and manufacturing facility such as Fulcrum proposes are unknown. It's not the pot, but the plot and scale of Fulcrum's proposed facility that concerns Housatonic citizens who will be impacted. This proposal is sited in a typical and small industrial park bordered by many residences. To Bill Nolan, I understand that you may feel you have a right to do whatever you want with your land within zoning regulations. I ask, however, if your permanent year-round residence was located across the street or next door to 22 Van Duzenville, would you have a pending sales agreement with Fulcrum Enterprises? Or would you use that 5+ acre plot for something more beneficial to your health and enjoyment of your residents? More solar panels, perhaps? to Kate McCormick and Stephen Cohen. If your primary residence was across from or next to 22 Van Dusenville Road, would you encourage your client, Fulcrum Enterprise, to locate there? Or would you be assisting them in finding a more appropriate location in an industrial park away from residences and children and potential litigation? To the Select Board, Steve, Ed, Bill, Kate, and Lee, if your only year-round residence was across the street from 22 Van Dusenville Road and you had children living there, how would that influence your permitting decision? You represent all of the residents of Great Barrington. I urge you, please, to consider the long-term consequences of your decision. With global warming, there are many unknown variables as to whether a large-scale marijuana facility will need to use excessive amounts of water or, in the future, pesticides, fungicides, mildewcides, etc., to grow a successful crop. With increasing temperatures, there'll be a greater need to run exhaust fans 24/7, further polluting the surrounding neighborhood. I'm proud to live in Great Barrington, a leader in environmental stewardship with the plastic bag and bottle ban, the installation of many solar farms and home solar arrays, and support of farmers and a vibrant farmers market. These endeavors are a win-win for all. I urge you, Select Board, to postpone making a decision on this proposal until there is more evidence that the marijuana industry can manage the odor mitigation and potential health, environmental, and economic problems that may arise from this. This, too, needs to be a win-win endeavor for Great Barrington. And to John Heck and others, I say, what the heck, Mr. Heck? Housatonic lives matter.
James Bailey, 911 Lane in Housatonic. Many questions. First, how many of you with the raise of hands are representing Fulcrum Enterprises today? 8, 9, 10, 12, safe to say? Does it?
So the questions go through me.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, how many are representing the people of this community today? Show of hands. How many?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, how many are representing these people out here today? I'm looking at 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7. You are representing this group of people. You people are charged with taking care of these residents out here. We don't have the money to hire lawyers, professionals, although I can tell you with 100% certainty that the smell technician can't say with 100% guarantee that it won't smell. Can you? Where is he?
No, keep focusing over here.
I'm pretty certain he can. I can tell you, if that's not built, there won't be any smell, correct? Simple. The very first meeting, public meeting they had, one of the selectmen was quoted as saying, I had my 3 questions answered. Well, I've got 3 questions for the select board, and I hope you guys think about these. First of all, first question, would you want this in your front yard, your neighborhood? Because let's face it, I know where there's an industrial tract right in Great Barrington. Right in Great Barrington. Number 2, we've heard the many who represent Fulcrum, but who's representing us? That's what we need. We need representation. And the third, why did Fulcrum come into this community so assured that this was going to go through that they do not have an alternate site? Throughout Massachusetts, marijuana growing is legal. They chose Great Barrington for a reason. They were to believe, led to believe by somebody, or maybe by us, the voters, who gave it, hey, the approval. This is what we want in our community. This is not what we want in our community. There's enough people here to say that. So why did they get that? I don't know. These are the 3 questions that I think all of you need to answer and ask yourselves. This is very, very important. And as to quote Mr. Abrams, it's not that simple. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary Elizabeth Merritt, 110 Christian Hill Road in Great Barrington.
A little louder, Mary.
Speak up.
Yeah, please.
This one?
No, no.
Oh, this one?
The other
The big
one's
one.
on.
Okay, well, as a general concern, I'm just watching our community being involved in a lot of very important decisions to be made. We're looking at horse racing, pot raising, manufacturing, bridges closing, the school, and I feel concerned that we're going to push to make decisions, and I feel like this process really needs to slow down. There's just so much at stake in this community, and I'm really concerned about the long-term effects of what we're facing. I think that there are more questions that the board needs to ask this organization. As a scientist myself, I'm particularly interested in what exactly is going on in that manufacturing facility. What is the extraction process doing? What are they extracting? Even though growing pot in Massachusetts is legal, is manufacturing drugs from marijuana legal? I don't know. I'm assuming it must be tetrahydrocannabinol or THC. And, what's going to happen with that? That's a very dangerous drug in our community, maybe not being monitored or secured properly. A 6-foot chain link fence is hardly a deterrent to people who might want access to a manufacturing facility filled with really high potency drugs. It's a lot different than just, growing some marijuana and smoking it. So I just feel that we need to do a lot more fact-finding, and we really need to be very careful. And, the community members, we need to educate ourselves more, but we also are relying on the board to ask our input too. However we can help, I think, as community members, we will. Thanks.
Good evening, my name is Michelle Bear of 70 Division Street. At this time, and with the permission of the chair, I'd like to submit nearly 300 signatures on this petition for the public record.
Yep.
Thank you. Oh, the petition's not in favor of this project, just to straighten that out. And before I begin, I just wanted to point out a couple things, an excellent PowerPoint presentation, but a couple things stood out. At the community outreach, the PowerPoint presentation referenced, I called it up while this one was going on, as Fulcrum being a tier 10. Just for the audience, tier 9 is 70,001 square feet to 80,000 square feet. So tier 10 starts at 80,001 square feet. So 1 square foot, the Fulcrum project would be a tier 10. Also, I heard that the odor mitigation is not an odor masker. According to the narrative contained in the packet, the fragrance is an odor masker. To assure the quality of life in our neighborhoods, we should invest in such things as improved sidewalks, walking trails, and biking routes, while aging buildings and other infrastructure require updating. Investments must be thoughtful, strategic, and thoroughly justified. That statement is from our 2013 master plan. Quality of life in our neighborhoods. The Fulcrum project doesn't support this statement. Born and raised in Van Duzenville, and now reinvesting, yes, reinvesting back in this area, it was my personal hope that in some way I could join my neighbors in restoring this area to the beauty I remember when I was a kid.
Yes, we had a few businesses back then, but we also had farms and open space. We had ponds, vernal pools, which happened to be on that property at one time, and woods. Where are they now? While grandfathering the businesses that are currently here, instead of further industrializing the area, why not restore it? Rather than having a neighborhood that is subjected to derogatory comments and an attitude of, well, it's so bad already, what else can go in there? Maybe town leaders and residents can abide by the spirit of our master plan and create an area that is attractive to young families, senior citizens, second homeowners, and even our tourist population. This neighborhood and the surrounding neighborhoods don't ask for much. We don't have a Mahaley theater, a trendy coffee shop, or even a farmer's market. But that's okay. After working all day, we just want to come home and enjoy our home and yard with family and friends. We want to work in our gardens, read a book in the backyard, play outside with our children or grandchildren, or even do a home project. And at the end of the day, we just want a good night's sleep. This is what we want, and we want it free from tainted air, unnatural lighting, constant noise, traffic overload, and the threat of contaminated water. As a community that presents itself as a green community, a sustainable community, and a mass housing hero, the Select Board will only contradict itself and the master plan by voting yes for this project. Remember, investments must be thoughtful, strategic, and thoroughly justified. The Fulcrum project isn't any of these. Thank you.
Garfield Green, 107 Castle Hill Avenue, Great Barrington. First, I want to say that the order indeed does start way before October, so that's going to be an issue. Secondly, I really have some concern about the smell. People, if you will, they have not had any experience in Great Barrington, in Massachusetts, and they've only done garbage. They have not done marijuana. I don't know why we're holding some stock with someone who has not done any practice in the field that they're talking about, that they're going to mitigate the smell. So I think that's a concern. I was at the planning board meeting a few weeks ago, and we were asked about heat, and they swore, excuse me, I won't say that. They said there is no heat, there will be no heat. Now I hear there's going to be propane for heat. How is that being distributed? How is it being housed? Who's going to check the safety on it? When is it going to be used? All those things I think need to be answered. That concerns me very much. One other thing, legally maybe everything is fine, but morally it's a disaster. And we're pushing something on people that they don't want. It's pretty obvious. I think if you look around and you hear what people are saying, we don't want it, we don't have to have it, put it somewhere else. No one's really opposed to it. They just don't like where it's going. And that seems to be a big issue for everyone in this room that is opposed to it. It's not so much that they have a facility, it's where it's going. And I think there's some homework still needs to be done that hasn't been done by the facility or the folks that want to run this facility. Some of it is certainly noise. Again, I said this once before, I don't know what we think in Great Barrington that's not going to happen with the smells and things that are bothering people out west, and for some reason it's not going to come to the East Coast. I don't know where your heads are thinking about that. Thanks.
My name is John Nelson, 326 North Plain Road. My wife and I committed ourselves to this area because of the natural beauty of the place and thoughtfully integrated agriculture and an emphasis in the community on wellness and welcome. We understand the compromises that are involved in having neighbors who are not always crazy about the smell of the goats or the sound of the roosters across the way, or our other farming neighbor cows who came through the property one day. But all that gets settled out. We're more concerned about the having a new manufacturer a few hundred yards to the east of our property. We share the concerns already expressed about the odor that will be produced by the plants, and also concerned that the plans for mitigation of it don't seem to be thoroughly tested on similar kinds of production. We're concerned about the use of toxic and inflammable chemicals in the processing. We're concerned about the increase of, even minimal increase of traffic in the area, especially since we heard just earlier tonight a good presentation on traffic issues throughout our town. And we are especially concerned about the impact of this manufacturing on the quality of life for residents who are just across the street, including a number of young children, and ask the question, would hope that the select board will continue to ask the question, will any investment that we're considering in this community contribute, be an addition to the wellness and the welcome of the community? And how many neighbors who are deeply invested in Housatonic really deeply also believe that this would be an unfortunate proposal for our area. And I hope that you'll keep questions like those at the forefront of your deliberation while you're making a decision. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Susan Lord. I'm a local physician, and I live at 203 Highland Street in Housatonic. I know we all care about the future of our town, although our ideas about what that might look like may be different. But I can't imagine why anyone would want to make such crucial decisions without all the facts on the table. And as of now, we have a multitude of valid questions on that table. Like the majority of us, I voted for legalization of marijuana, but I imagine that most of us did not anticipate the repercussions of major corporations coming into our small towns throughout Western Massachusetts to set up major marijuana farms and processing factories. And they come in fast with aggressive lawyers assuring us that their scientists have perfected the technology and have our best interests at heart. Given the history of corporations in America polluting our water sources with fracking, creating hundreds of Superfund sites where chemicals are stored supposedly safely, where Flint, Michigan has lost their water site, and where companies purposefully addict our citizens to tobacco and opioids. I am surprised that our town officials have not been more vocal and rigorous in their questioning of Fulcrum and assuring us that they too want the truth through an independent, comprehensive impact study. Comprehensive is the important word here. The first study proposed was to include only the impact of odor. Then noise was included. When I asked about water quality and the potential toxic exposure to be added to the study, I was told that the vote was final and I was out of order. And what about land values, future development of Housatonic, our carbon footprint, tourism, and the general quality of life we chose in moving here? All of these issues should be included in the impact study. I have been to the Conservation Commission and the Board of Health meetings where the attorney for Fulcrum tried to use technicalities and intimidation to silence them. These two bodies are elected by us to give us their expert opinions. I can only surmise that Fulcrum is trying to short-circuit our town's process of coming to the right decision for us. Perhaps they don't feel that confident about their technology and that they anticipate what they call unforeseen impact on our community, for which they are willing to pay a fee. But as we all know from the PCBs dumped in the Housatonic, damage to our environment is often irreversible. If the factory is built, and if there are problems that can't be fixed, are we in a position to shut down Fulcrum? I very much doubt it. As a physician and scientist, I've studied the medical literature and found that these new technologies have been linked to serious health outcomes, including severe allergies and asthma, especially for our children and elderly. Exposed students have reported headaches and nausea. There is also evidence that chemicals may prove toxic for workers and citizens. who are exposed, and these are in PubMed, peer-reviewed journals.
Your time is just about up, so if you would just
Thank
conclude
you.
it.
I'm
Thank you.
almost done. I am not reassured by the literature that our groundwater is adequate and that it will be protected with 100% assurance. And if you look at Mr. Mercer's website, he will agree. This is complicated territory and it takes time to sort out the evidence. Housatonic citizens have spent countless hours doing the research, and that research has led to serious concerns. This job of research should be done by our elected officials before they sign any agreements.
So
In
your
or-
time is up.
My one question I'd like to leave you with that I would ask is, where are the sites where similar plants have been built and are successful, and can we have access to that information?
Just talk to
The
the
big,
whole
the
time.
big one.
The big one's the best.
So Maureen Quigley, 9 High Street, Housatonic. I just wanted to state some of the things that are from the Housatonic Waterworks webpage. It's safe, clean drinking water is essential to the health and well-being of all. That's why our highest priority is to provide you and your family with high-quality drinking water. It's hard to imagine running out of water, but it could happen. Between 1950 and 2000, the population in the U.S. doubled, while public health demand for water tripled. The extra stress on water supplies and distribution systems threatens our health as well as the environment. The good news is that there's plenty of small things you could do to conserve water and help avert future water shortages. Every drop counts. So he says, if you ever wonder whether the small changes excuse me, you make really matter, consider this. Each of us uses an average of 100 gallons of water per day. Jim Mercer says that he is able to provide 365 gallons per water per day to run the plant, and that's an estimate. That is over 3.5 times the amount that the average citizen uses on a daily basis, with no update to the infrastructure. And we know last summer we had brown water. He has a vested interest because he has a large monetary gain from agreeing to this. My question to you is, has there been a third-party, independent, fully comprehensive impact study that verifies Jim Mercer's assessment is correct, that there will be no impact on the quantity and quality of the water provided to the families served, being that that is the priority of Housatonic Waterworks? The mission statement of the Select Board for Great Barrington is the town of Great Barrington is committed to providing quality services to the entire community through good planning and cost-effective measures. Fulcrum is using their own experts, which is a conflict of interest. That's basic common sense. They would never hire an expert to come in and say that these things are going to be a problem. We have to have our own independent studies, as well as Fulcrum attorney at the Board of Health meeting, try to use insults and bullying techniques towards our physician that was on the Board of Health that had very valid and legitimate concerns. So I ask that you consult with the Board of Health and some of the other major issues. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sarah Yo. I live at 16 Van Road. Sarah Yo. 16 Van Duzenville Road, and I'm about an eighth of a mile from location. And I'm very concerned with everything that everyone has said. The value of my property, which I've invested thousands in. I'm also very concerned about the wildlife. We have a family of bears that have come year after year after year. Mother with her various cubs. We have families of bobcats. We have families of coyotes. Number of small animals that come year after year out of hibernation. And I think that you have to realize what residue that comes off marijuana plants. No matter what anyone says, it cannot be controlled. The residue becomes a very sticky substance. It affects birds and their flight. It affects their eggs. It affects bees. It affects butterflies. You know, I don't think it's, and the list could go on and on and on. This is my heartache. I am a licensed foster mother. And I've seen children come through my house that have been really, really upset in one way or other, and I mean very upset. And I've embraced them and turned them around. Most of them are younger. And I will not be able to foster anymore because of my location to the site. That is the Department of Children and Families rule. Nor will anyone else, if they want to become a foster parent, be able to. This just breaks my heart. I mean, it's just, I think everyone else has said exactly what I feel about the value of property, the being near residents and private property owned by residents. And I'd also like to say there was a list of industrial, that map is misleading because AmeriGas, that's quite a ways down. This comes out like, oh, it's just a whole blob of industry. It's not. One last thing.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it was.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Denise Forbes. I'm 325 North Plain Road. And basically, the signatures we took on those petitions, I gathered up and gave them to Michelle to give to you guys. Those petitions represent a community that's unhappy with the pending proposal to have Fulcrum come in and disrupt our residential neighborhood. The proposed location is totally inappropriate. There are so many options that you could be utilizing. For instance, an affordable housing community. All you have to do is go to a real estate developer, get an RFP, and try to get something in the works. We can all help with that. And also, let's talk about your master plan. It cites Van Duzenville as moderate to heavy residential, okay? So how does that equate to installing a Tier 9, 80,000 square foot manufacturing plant emitting significant odors and noise? Come on now, really? Housatonic matters. And this is total disrespect for all the residents, their lifestyles, and their well-being. You have children across the street and elderly folks. And also, it's crazy. Sarah, does anyone care that Sarah shall lose her ability to foster children, whom, by the way, all need loving homes? Do you care that those children she fosters will have to be rehomed somewhere else? How do you feel if that was your loved one? The impact this will have on the community will be long-lasting and devastating, and impossible to get rid of once their claws sink into the gravel that it will be built on. There will be no turning back, and you are putting us on a slippery downward slope from which we may never recover. After all, they only propose to hire 4 people. One of which we know is David Ross, because we've heard that before, because he's going to be the operational manager. So then there's 3 jobs left to fill for the locals. 3 jobs, okay? And David Ross comes from Bend, Oregon. He's not a local. The proposed amount of money spent on the salaries for the 4 people, plus remember the 10 other people, when it gets busy and have to get all that other stuff done, $300,000. Okay, so you take out David Ross's salary. How much do you think the locals are going to get paid? Minimum wage on a $300,000 budget? It looks like, all in all, your local hires will get a minimum wage. And tell us, how does this help Housatonic? Really, come on now. And how do we really know about these Fulcrum people? We've been trying to research and find out information on them. Nothing anywhere to be found. What's going on here? You can find out about any business anywhere. Really secretive stuff here. So what about Novo Farm right down the road? You just heard about Berkshire Eagle bringing out the news about Novo Farm. They're getting indicted for all kinds of issues. What were their real intentions when they were before their select board in Sheffield? Are these people honest, thoughtful, or shrewd business people who want to rape our town? And if John Heck is a man of his word, he'll take his proposed business and go elsewhere, because Housatonic doesn't want him. And you, okay, there was an interview on Spectrum News, and he said if he's not wanted, he'd want to go somewhere else. Thank you.
Trevor Forbes, 325 North Plain Road. I really congratulate Fulcrum actually on a phenomenally slick presentation. Well done, guys. That was really impressive stuff. But there's such a lot of it that I would have thought the select board would really want to do a fact check on. And I think in this day and age of false news and everything else, I think it's very important that we actually do our fact checking very accurately. And I do commend the board for actually requiring an independent study. And we will look forward to actually seeing the results of that. Just like to comment on a few things. My wife Denise actually mentioned the master plan for Great Barrington. And I guess that's something that the select board in front of me, Mr. Chairman, I believe you probably uphold. So it does seem very strange to a lot of people in Housatonic that on the one hand, you should be looking forward to Van Dusenville having moderate to heavy residential development over the coming years. Yet you're prepared to put in an 80,000 square foot manufacturing processing facility, which probably would be much more appropriate to be positioned in a proper industrial area rather than a light industrial area embedded within a residential location. Let me just refer to the town of Great Barrington's definition of light industrial. It's on the Smart Growth Overlay District zoning bylaws. And the town of Great Barrington, and everybody might be interested to hear this, actually define light industrial as an operation that is free from agents disturbing to the neighborhood, including, but not limited to, odors, bright lights, vibration, among a lot of other factors. I fail to see how this particular project ticks any of those boxes. We've heard a lot about odor mitigation. I do notice, and I do commend NCM for their very new website, because after they first proposed, and they basically put their odor control mitigation to the boards, various boards in Great Barrington, mysteriously, the whole aspect of NCM providing marijuana odor mitigation seemed to disappear entirely from their website. They now have a very good, slick new website. Looks very, very impressive. It's, I hope you enjoy it. The issue, however, is that people who have been affected by this odor mitigation process and I refer to people from the town of Bend, Oregon, don't seem to know anything about NCM. And when you ask them about odor mitigation, they seem to be rather amused by the whole concept. So maybe, Select Board, I would like to request that you actually do get in touch with your counterparts in Bend, Oregon, and maybe some of the various people, the residents of that area, just to satisfy yourself that they are telling the right story.
Your time.
One more point, and that is to do with Housatonic Waterworks. And I know this is a factor, as you've already explained, Mr. Chairman, for Jim Mercer and Housatonic Waterworks. My wife actually contacted Jim Mercer, she has the text messages, and asked him about these particular concerns that we have. And one of the concerns that she had, and that's been explained by other people here, was what happens in time of drought? Who gets preferential water? Is it the residents of Housatonic, or will it be Fulcrum? The reply on a text was 4 question marks. I think everybody has question marks here. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Doug Stevenson, 351 North Plain Road in Housatonic. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a very lengthy special permit application. It must have taken you hours to go through it. I know it took me hours to go through it. And there's a lot of representations made in there, and I know that Mr. Heck is a man of his word, and I don't question his integrity. I know he's going to stand behind every representation that's made there. And him being a man of his word, I know he'll stand behind everything he said, including the representation he made to Spectrum News in the end of May, where he said, and I quote, "We certainly don't want to be anywhere we're not wanted." And I think you get the sense that you're not wanted in Housatonic, Mr. Heck.
Amen.
And I ask you to please stand by your word.
Yes.
Timothy Shumsky, 5 Deer Trail Road. So a lot's been made of quality of life, so I won't go over that. But I'd like to question the economic impact that was presented. There's only positives presented, and it was glanced over. The fact that there will be devaluing of local residents' properties, and I'd actually contend that that may more than offset any economic improvement that would come to the area. That's all I had. I just wanted that on record and bring that into question. Thank you.
Carol Deal. Carol Deal, 224 Grove Street, Housatonic. What people who don't live in Housatonic may not realize is that we love where we live. We love it with an enormous passion. When we get together, we talk about how much we love where we live. And we are always fighting for our well-being in Housatonic. If you go to Fulcrum's website, you will see it says, our products are sourced in a remote area of Colorado, far from any habitation. Are they going to change that to our products are sourced in a village neighborhood next to a railroad and a road and a PCB-filled river? Is that a good advertisement? I really think that there are many things that we could do that would enhance our lives in Great Barrington, that would enhance our lives in Housatonic. The return from this, 4 employees and a very small amount of tax breaks, is not enough. We have to think about how we can make things better. I have seen some very big mistakes made in my time, which is a long time, in this area. I think about the school consolidation, which we are still paying for. I think about the Main Street renovation, which took the soul out of our downtown. These are things we cannot get back. We have to start thinking bigger. We have to start thinking farther into the future. We just can't say a little revenue is good. We have to have a much bigger picture, and we have to do much more research. And we have to make ours a better community. Thank you.
My name is Mitch Greenwald. I'm an attorney.
What's your address?
I live in Pittsfield. I live in West Stockbridge. I work in Pittsfield, and I represent the Forbes and Loubert families.
Right,
and I'm using the time of Bruce Loubert, who has not yet spoken.
Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. We've all heard a lot of people speak very eloquently about things that they know passionately and well that are troubling them deeply about this proposal. And I, incidentally, have not yet heard anyone speak in favor of it. There's a lot of problems with this proposal. The biggest one is probably odor, and let me just talk for a minute about that. There's two levels of looking at odor. First of all, in your review of this project and your decision whether to approve it or not, what's the standard for odor? There are at least 2 standards, and the applicant has used them both, even though it's impossible that they could both be done. It's just inconsistent. One's in the host agreement, which you're going to consider later tonight. I would urge you to not consider it. It's premature. That says nothing off-site, period. The other is the nuisance standard, which is in their application. Nuisance is much harder to define. It invites litigation and trouble, and that's actually been the experience of communities in Massachusetts and elsewhere, some of which are working on their 3rd odor control issue. So the second one is, how do you implement whatever standard you choose? And there's a number of ways to do that, and your odor expert will help you on that. But from what I can tell, and from the research we've done, the method they've chosen to eliminate the odor is far from the best. There's at least 2 that are better. We hope that the experts will deal with that. There's also questions of water use, which you've heard about. The water company has been under constant citation from DEP. The water company has admitted publicly that there are sometimes pressure problems in Housatonic. Wastewater, lights, noise, traffic. We'll get into those at another time. In the bylaw, there's a number of factors that you have to look at, and it's really not a question of they get over this hump, they get over that hump. Almost all of them, in particular, are balancing tests, the good versus the bad. And I don't see much good coming from this proposal other than to the applicants. And I'm not knocking their desire or their ability to make a living. That's the way the economy works. But I am suggesting that that's not the only thing to be looked at. All these people here have factors that need to be looked at and really overbalance any need or any benefit to the applicants. I think you're going to need experts, 1 or more, on odor, which is very specialized, noise, lighting, and water. All those things need to be looked at by someone other than the applicant. Finally, it's dangerous to approve it. Things are uncertain. You're going to make these people the guinea pigs for technology that's untried in a situation that's untried. That's not fair. Finally, just procedurally, new things will be submitted periodically, and we request what I believe we're entitled to under the law, that this board not close the hearing until 14 days after the last submission, so that all the people that want to, including my clients, can have 14 days to examine all the material. Thank you.
Laura Kiefner, I live at Reed Street, right down the road here, and I'm not going to speak eloquently. I am 4 doors down from the new pot shop that's going to be opening on South Main Street. I went to an informational meeting about it. Ed, you were there. and I was more or less butting my head up against the wall because it's financial, it's money. That's all that matters to this town is money. What you're gonna get, that's all that matters. I stood there at that meeting and told that woman, did she know that 2 elderly people were killed at the crosswalk? No. Did she know it was a bus stop? No. Did she know we had kids in the neighborhood? No. She didn't care. I said to her, this is all about money, isn't it? She said, yes. Ed, you told me the same thing. We're gonna get good money from this. So it didn't matter. And you've got a whole room full of people here, and people, you're butting your head up against the wall, because I'm watching their faces, and they don't care. They don't care because it's gonna be money that's coming into this town. You know, where are you gonna put this money? Where are you gonna put this money that you've gotten from the other places? Are you gonna put it to affordable housing? You're gonna fix our bridges that we can't go over anymore? It's getting ridiculous. It's getting ridiculous. Or our taxes, correctly. But people, I butted my head at that meeting. The only ones in this building right now who want this is the people that want to build it. You've got a whole room full of people here, and I'm sure there's more people out there that don't want it. Listen to the people that voted you in. Don't ignore us.
I don't know if I can follow that. If there is any more audience participation, we'll just adjourn and we'll start it. No, no, please.
Valerie Loker, 231
Thanks.
North Plain Road, Housatonic. This is an enormous land use problem that the entire state of Massachusetts is going to be dealing with over and over and over on a piecemeal basis. My main concern is the scale of this project, not necessarily the crop, but the scale. 80,000 square feet is a football field and a half. It's half of a major league baseball field. It's pretty big. I would like to give you some questions that you can use to help guide you, because I have a little bit of an understanding of how greenhouses work. I've been a commercial greenhouse grower in Housatonic for a very long time. And these are mostly grower-related questions. What's the skin of the greenhouses? Is it double poly?
Polypropylene.
So it's not rigid.
No, it's not rigid.
And most greenhouse films, and they're double skinned, need to be replaced every 5 to 6 years. That's 80,000 square feet, bigger. No, actually, 160,000 square feet minimum of greenhouse skin that's going to have to go somewhere. It's a lot. I'd like to know what the optimal cannabis growing regimen is, the highs that they want to not exceed, and the lows that they can exceed. I'm hearing there's no extra heat to heat these greenhouses. Massachusetts is not California, it is not Colorado. We have a great deal less insulation here, with sunlight actually coming into the greenhouses. So in the swing grow times, which is May, they're going to have to be heating. And in the end of the growing season, they're going to have to be heating because our temperatures go down below freezing. It's my understanding that cannabis is a high light and a high heat crop. I'm a little bit intrigued as why they oriented their greenhouses on a north-south axis, meaning they are running north and south. In the Northeast, we generally orient on an east-west orientation so that the maximum solar penetration can get to the crop. So they are already starting out at a disadvantage for optimum cannabis cultivation. And believe me, greenhouses are meant to optimize. They're high intensity
and high-impact structures for the crop. I would also like to know how long these fans are going to be running. My greenhouse fans kick on at 10 o'clock and they run into the night on a hot summer day. We've been through a couple of very, very hot periods here, and it's probably going to worsen.
So your time's almost up. Do you have these questions written? Because we're
I can write them,
Yeah,
yes.
can you submit them to us?
Just out of curiosity, what grows in a rain garden? Sounds really lovely. It sounds very, very new agey. Basically, it's to take the snow load off of the greenhouses in the winter. Those greenhouses will have to be heated so that the snow falls off of them. And they need the space for it to happen. The other thing that just occurred to me when I was hearing about the odor neutralization, atomization, does that mean that all those solar panels are going to get blasted with hemp-infused neutralizer? Who's going to clean them? Thank you.
Which one is it? This one?
Big one.
Hi, I'm Terry Wallace, 276 Park Street. And, gosh, I've lived here for 10 years. I know enough not to say I'm from here. The circumstance brought me here, and I enjoy living here, and that's why we stayed and bought a house. So, excuse me. I guess I have a couple questions. Firstly, we've talked about the capacity for growth of the product. I haven't heard too much with regard to the processing facility. I understand it's a closed loop system. I also tried to do some research on the system. Tried to do some research on the cultivation process, and was directed to a lot of advertisements for companies, not unlike one of the companies we heard from with regard to odor control and ventilation systems and such, which leads me to two possible conclusions. There's either very little known about how this whole process ended up working out, or there's very little that they want us to know about it. And my knowledge of it is rudimentary, so I'll apologize if I'm speaking out of turn. I guess my concern with regard to the processing facility, as much as we have a grow period for this product, the processing facility, I imagine, can run year-round. And I don't know what the capacity of a 5,000 square foot processing facility is, and whether or not it's strictly for what is going to be grown on site here. But as I look through the CCC guidelines with regard to licensing, it strikes me that the processing parties can bring in product from wherever they want and process it. There didn't appear to be any limitation with regard to that. There was a limitation with regard to the canopy. There was no limitation with regard to what could be processed on the site. So it concerns me that hasn't been addressed. And, is there a potential for an enormous amount of traffic that would be produced by a facility that didn't just process their own product, but rather product from other growth facilities around the surrounding community? Lastly, I would say if there is only Sarah to be concerned as a foster parent losing her ability to do that, that is the only reason. That's the reason you shouldn't do it. That's the reason. That's enough.
So this is going to be the last public speaker for the evening.
Warren Idler.
You are, Richard.
Richard Ruth, 34 Pearl Street, downstream
and downwind from this Fulcrum project. I see here that many of the people here have said to the board that you must do your research. You must follow up on their promises to make sure they're real, and therefore you have to bring in experts who can deep dive into what they say and the technology and show us what's real and what's promised. Now, who's going to pay for the technology? The experts to work for us to get the right side of what we believe should happen or is going to happen. And my feeling is, too much in the past, we have paid for that.
Richard, let me just stop you for a second. I haven't done it to anybody else. We hire, they pay.
Okay.
Okay.
That has, I was not aware
Right,
of
so,
that. They pay.
Yes.
But I also noticed right away they're asking for a break. They're not asking to pay, and they're not saying, oh, we'll pay 3% as required. We only on 1.5%. We've already have caved in to another cannabis company that says we shouldn't pay 3%. How about giving us a break? 1.5%, because we're not going to have anybody lined up, because we're not selling retail, we're selling wholesale, or we're shipping it out. And I find that we're cutting our own financial throats by caving in to these companies that come here and right away they're going to make a lot of money. And we have to pay for the fire department if they have to come in and inspect. Every time they have a problem with security and the bell goes off and lights flash and the police have to come there and check. So we ought to stick by 3%. If you're in a cannabis business in any way whatsoever, we want the 3%. If they can't pay the 1.5% to begin with, then you put a stipulation if you ever sign a contract anywhere along the line with these manufacturers or retailers, you say, all right, you want a break, we'll give you a break 1.5%. But when you sell your business, we want the other 1.5%. Because that's what's going to happen to many of these companies. Wall Street's going to buy them out in a few years and consolidate. And I worked on Wall Street for 15 years. I know what goes on and the attitude there. They're going to suck as much money out of us. And when there's a controversy, what happens is they bring in the heavy lawyers, and then many small municipalities collapse like an old suitcase. And we wind up saying, okay, uncle, we can't afford the lawyers to protect ourselves. I want to make sure they pay for the process and not us. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go back to the last speaker because no one else was in line.
If I don't speak, I'll really kick myself
Okay.
later.
This will be the last speaker for this evening. There'll be other opportunities.
Thank you. My name is Rachel Kelly. I reside at 213 Oak Street, Housatonic. And we just got a house in Housatonic. We are one of the young families that we're talking about. We have small children and a teenager with allergies on medication. And so for the children, I really worry about this project. I worry about the physical impact and what it's going to do to the children. And I'm reading stories about it. And well, first of all, we moved in, and about a week later heard about this project. And I didn't know anything about marijuana cultivation. I voted for it, the legalization. So thankfully, all our neighbors in Housatonic, thank you, new wonderful neighbors, have done a lot of research and are putting out information to look at and to research and to read, real stories in real newspapers and things. And so what I'm learning is really awful about these grow operations right next to schools where children and staff are getting headaches and having breathing issues and asthma. And there are spikes in those physical symptoms from these operations. And, I want to have a laundry line and hang out my laundry and not have to rewash it like you do when they spray on the fields locally. So you know, smells are real, and I worry about that. And I also really worry about the earth and the water and the impact of this industry and what it's doing. I haven't heard anything about catchment systems under these greenhouses, so I've heard them say that it's all going down into the groundwater, and I just don't think we know enough about it. So.
Thank you. So one of the discussion points tonight was the board hasn't asked enough questions, and the board hasn't, the experts haven't spoken. Well, I would tell you, this is the beginning of the process. This is the end of the process. We've let the citizens speak, and you'll have another chance to speak at the next meeting. The board will ask questions. I'm not sure we're going to do it tonight, but we will ask questions. And if it takes 2 meetings, 3 meetings, till we get all of our questions asked and hopefully answered, that's what it will take. So this is just the beginning of the process. This isn't the end. And I would assure you that not one board member here, although I haven't asked any of them, have made up their mind, as some of you think, ahead of time. This is a very long process. This is not easy for us. So we will continue this hearing. I'm going to ask the board. It's 9:30 and we still have some more items. I say we continue this and we do our questions and get hopefully some expert advice. The only thing I would ask from the board is there any other material or experts that you want us to bring in? If there are, we should do that now. Lee.
I'd like to have a peer review of the water situation, to have someone verify.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement of that. So.
And I also look forward to talking to the fire chief and the police chief. Sorry, I was just asking to have a peer review of the water situation and verify the Housatonic water works and
water usage.
Yes, the water, but would actually have a peer review of everything to do with the water situation. Is that clear?
What's that?
Related to this project specifically.
Yes, related to this project. And I was just saying, I look forward to having to hear from the fire chief and the police chief.
Yeah, they will be at our next meeting if they can make it. We won't close until they're able to speak. So, anyone else?
We're
Kate?
also waiting to hear from Board of Health and Conservation Commission, is that correct?
Well, the Board of Health will not rule until the experts on sound and on noise and odor report. So that's why it's going to take a while. Okay.
Just to answer your question, Conservation Commission did state that it was non-jurisdictional, so I don't know if you've gotten their letter, but we're done with that board.
They want more information.
Excuse me?
Sorry, they want more information, though. They were going,
Not the Conservation, the Board of Health.
Conservation Commission. I think you might have left.
Okay, so we'll address that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's not. Okay, anything else?
Do we have a date, time, and place?
Yeah, you need to make a motion to continue this. Let me just get my calendar on to.
Thank you, Steve, for clarifying that.
You're welcome. So it's the 23rd. I would ask that we continue it to 6 p.m.
I'd like to make a motion to continue the public hearing.
Yes.
To September 23rd, 6 p.m. Here?
Yes.
In this same location.
A second. Any discussion?
Roll call.
Yes.
Right.
Kate, does that work with you?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. So it's a roll call vote.
Okay.
Lee?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Aye. But it's unanimous. 6 p.m. I'm old and I can't go this long.
You want to remind them of
If everybody from Housatonic, just before we, is that okay?
Yeah.
Before we move on to the next thing, just a reminder, sorry. Since there are so many Housatonic residents here this evening, sorry,
Since there are so many Housatonic residents here this evening, just as a reminder, at the Hoosie Dome tomorrow at 7 p.m. tomorrow at the Hoosie Dome, we're having a community discussion about the Housatonic School. So as you are so obviously concerned about the future of the community, we really hope to see you all there to discuss the future of that building as well.
Okay, let's move ahead.